So the second canto, second chapter is titled "The Lord in the Heart," which, as the name suggests, talks about Krishna as the super soul. The second canto, first chapter, talked about Krishna in the Virat Roop, and the second chapter talks about Krishna as the Lord in the Heart, which is the super soul. And the bulk of the chapter describes the two paths that the yogis follow. One is that of direct liberation, and the second is that of Krama Mukti, in which there is a gradual path of liberation. Then, beginning from verse 32, Sukdev Goswami will talk about the veracity of what he has said, establish the disciplic succession, and he will also talk about direct devotional service. Because this is a segue into the third chapter, this is the last set of verses in the second, and it also is the appropriate point at which Sukadeva Goswami is transitioning into what he always wanted to do, which is speak about bhakti. Now he speaks about the Virat Roop, he speaks about Paramatma to establish its relevance and also to cast a wider net. But most importantly, he talks it as a path or en route for some people for the stage of bhakti. So in verse 32, Sukadeva Goswami had said that your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom he was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. So the reason that he is establishing or re-establishing the disciplic succession, because what he is going to speak now in the subsequent verses requires a greater leap of faith. It is something that is more transcendental. For instance, when he described the Virat Roop, then he was anchoring it on empirical observation. He was anchoring it on matter. When he described Paramatma, it was anchored on intelligence. Now what he will speak is anchored on faith. So when somebody is accepting something on faith, then it is all the more important for them to understand that the source is infallible, because ultimately that is what guarantees the validity of what's being spoken. So having established this in verse 32, in verse 33, Sukadeva Goswami will now introduce the topic of bhakti. So 2 to 33. Nayatonyaha Shiva Pantha Vishata Samsravaya Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yogayato Bhave. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at in the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. So in verse 31, Sukadeva Goswami had first begun to talk about bhakti. So just to recap, in 31, Sukadeva Goswami had said that only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction in his constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection is never again attracted by this material world, and he never returns. So he introduced the path and the destination of bhakti, and now he is so now he is further elaborating on what was first stated in verse 31, that this path of bhakti is most auspicious and it does not have obstacles. So two paths had been described earlier: the path of mukti and the path of krama mukti, and both of them has been described to give liberation. But this path is a little different because it does not focus on mukti, but it focuses on bhakti, and it does not give liberation, it gives prema, Krishna prema to be specific. So this path of bhakti yoga is the most auspicious means of deliverance. So this is an empirical statement that is being made by Sukadeva Goswami, but he has already established the fact that it is coming from Krishna to Lord Brahma, and thus in a bona fide disciplic succession. So similar point has been made by Sutta Goswami in 1.2.6-8, that bhakti yoga, or those processes which ultimately culminate in bhakti yoga, are the highest form of religion. So in commenting on this verse, Srila Jiva Goswami, he says in Bhakti Sandarbha, Anuched 28, so he explains the sequence leading to Sukadeva Goswami's glorification of the process of bhakti. So he says that in 2.2.33, Sukadeva Goswami, 2.2.33 is the current verse that we are reading. That 2.2.33, Sukadeva Goswami is directly glorifying bhakti. And this he does after describing the method of Gyan leading to Mukti. So this is described in 2.2.15, and the process of Yoga, which is 2.2.20. So 2.2.15 describes the process of immediate liberation, and 2.2.22 describes the process of gradual liberation. So after describing these two processes of immediate and gradual liberation, Sukadeva Goswami is now expressing the superiority of bhakti. The specific bhakti that he is talking about is Karma Mishra Bhakti, wherein one offers the fruit of his work to the Lord. So that is why Sukadeva Goswami says that for those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no deliverance than what is aimed at as the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. As per Jiva Goswami, the direct devotional service is the process of hearing and chanting, Shravan and Kirtan. So Vishwanath Chakravarti states that following this path, is far superior to attaining the perfection of the other paths, namely mukti, because in bhakti, mukti is not a goal, but it is a side effect. It is not even a desired result. It may come on its own. The goal is Krishna Prem. So the purport by Srila Prabhupada is actually very interesting, because what Prabhupada does in the purport is that he relates the Bhagavad Gita to the Bhagavatam, this particular verse of the Bhagavatam, wherein he actually talks about the various paths of perfection that are given in Bhagavad Gita. And then he talks about the superiority of bhakti. So he starts out by quoting 927. So 927 is the Yad Karoshi Yadasnashi Yad Joshi Dadashi, that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering for me. So what is this? What kind of bhakti is this? This is Karma Mishra Bhakti. Because the focus here is whatever you do, the whatever activities that you do, your activities are directed towards me. So after having stated that this is the highest form, then Srila Prabhupada goes on to give the reference of Bhagavad Gita 12.5, which is the verse that says that for those whose mind is attracted by the impersonal absolute, advancement is very troublesome. So so it is obviously something that is inferior. So this is the path of those who are attracted to the impersonal feature of the absolute, and the advancement is inferior. Then Srila Prabhupada talks about verse 790. Bhaunam janmanamante jnanamanman prapadyante, that one who is pursuing the path of knowledge after many, many births will realize the importance of Vasudeva. So this verse can be read in two ways, of course. Bhavanam janmanamante jnanavanman prapadyante. One way is that one who becomes knowledgeable after many births, but also it is read in the terms of that one who is in knowledge after many births. So the point that is made is that knowledge after maturing in many, many births will culminate in bhakti, which means that bhakti is here, knowledge is over here. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyante. That little bit knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge, and then ultimately that jnanavan mam prapadyan vasudeva sarvamit samatma sudurva. So he has established the superiority of bhakti over the impersonal absolute. He has established it over those who are following the path of knowledge. Then in 647, yogi nam api sarvesham madhyatena antaratmana shraddhavam bhajate yomam. That of all the yogis, the one who always abides in me, thinks of me, renders transcendental devotional service in me. So same thing. Previously, the superiority was after many births. Here, the superiority is one amongst many. That of the millions of yogis, one who yogi nam api sarvesham. That of the millions of yogis, one who is able to surrender unto me is the greatest of all. So that yogi amongst the thousands and millions who understands with great faith, who abides in me. So with great faith, he understands the position of Krishna, renders devotional service, bhakti. That such a yogi is Yuktatama, that he is the greatest of the yogi. And then these verses are of course summarized in 1866, Sarvadharma Pratyaja Mamekam Sharanam Praj, which talks about the highest form of devotional service. So we see that Srila Prabhupada, he is establishing, using Bhagavad Gita, what Sukadeva Goswami is establishing through the Bhagavatam, again indicating the congruence of the two philosophical books. Sridhar Swami, he comments saying that for persons traversing the cycle of birth and death, there are many paths to salvation, such as penance and yoga, but the only true path is that which is mentioned in this verse, which is Shravana Kirtan. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada further writes, Srila Sridhar Swami and all other acharyas like Jiva Goswami agree that Bhakti Yoga is not only easy, simple, natural, and free from trouble, but is also the only source of happiness for the human being. So, actually, all the paths, if they're followed properly, they culminate in Bhakti. So, Bhakti is the perfection of all the other paths. And the question, of course, arises is that why doesn't Sukadeva Goswami only speak about Bhakti? And three reasons are summarized by Prabhupada in the purport. One is that he gives favorable conditions for spiritual practices that are supporting angas. So when one is practicing bhakti, but one is not sufficiently purified, they can take support from gyan, they can take support from karma, and they can take support from yoga. Like some people, they will do the pranayam before chanting because they feel that it helps them in chanting. So they don't do pranayam for yoga, but they do it to clear the mind for for the effect of chanting. So that's one reason. Second reason is that Sukadeva Goswami is demonstrating that the Srimad Bhagavatam is for everyone, not just for devotees. It's for jnanis or yogi. He's aware that in the crowd that is sitting there, there are people with different inclinations, and he does not want to exclude them. So he includes them and guides them to the path of bhakti. And final, which is more a mood of rasika, that Srimad Bhagavatam is being spoken by Sukadeva Goswami with so much of love that even his indirect explanations are relishable. Even they are sweet, because in all his explanation, his love for Krishna shines. Okay, so this verse is a verse that establishes the superiority of bhakti over all practices. We'll move on to the next verse, verse 34. Bhagwan Brahma Kartasneya Tritiranviskya Manishaya Tad Adhyavashayat Kuthasto Ratiratman Yato Bhavet. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Veda 3 times. And after scrutinizing and examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. So this is again Sukadeva Goswami establishing the disciplic succession. And not just the disciplic succession, but he's establishing the fact that this is the essence of the Vedas. So he's saying that Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma is no common person. Lord Brahma is the firstborn. He is the personification of intelligence. He is the first recipient of the Vedas. He receives them directly from Krishna. He is directly initiated by Krishna. So great personality. So with great attention and concentration of the mind, he studied the Veda not once, not twice, but 3 times. He studies it 3 times and scrutinizingly. And then what does he ascertain? That attraction for the personality of Godhead is the highest form of religion. So Parishit Maharaj may question Sukadeva Goswami that you're speaking of something that you're presenting as the essence of everything else, and you're expecting me to accept this by my intelligence. So are you sure? Are you sure? Because it's like Sukadeva Goswami is now handing him the keys to the kingdom. And he said, I've spoken of many things, I've spoken of many paths, but this is what you should do. The earlier were options, now it is a recommendation, strong recommendation, that this is what you should do. So Parishit Maharaj is asking implicitly, are you sure? If I commit myself to this, are you sure that I will not be misdirected? Are you sure that there is nothing else that is even superior to this? So in this verse, Sukadeva Goswami is answering that implicit question. The word Bhagwan, Srila Prabhupada translates it to Brahma. That the great personality of Brahma with great attention read the Vedas. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he translates Bhagwan to Krishna. That Krishna with great attention and concentration studied the Vedas. So if Brahma is great, Krishna is of course a lot more greater. So neither of the two interpretations take away the gravity of the word Bhagwan. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually explains in the purport why he translates Bhagwan to Krishna. So he says that the Lord as an incarnation takes the form of a sage to review the Vedas scrupulously. And in order to substantiate that, he provides a quote from the Shrutis, Samunir Bhutva Saminchatya, that the Lord became a sage and contemplated. So by this, the Lord, he gets a view, and here Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is casting a wider net. He is saying that this is not the conclusion of this Brahma in this universe. And that's why he's elevating the word Bhagwan to Krishna. The Krishna, so if you kind of put it together, what Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is saying, that Krishna becomes all the Brahmas in all the universe. So as infinite Brahmas in infinite universes, Krishna, he studies the Vedas with great scrutiny. So he says that he describes as Kuthastha. So Kuthastha means without being bewildered. Kuthastha also means that one who does not change. So without being bewildered, Krishna, as infinite Brahmas in infinite universes, studies the Vedas and then ascertains that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the highest perfection of religion. So this is not just in this universe for this Brahma in this age, but this is a lot more universal than that. So the same point is made by Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:21-42, where it is said that adhyavasyat, that it is determined that the essence of all the Vedas, from which kutastha prema, from which unchanging, which means permanent prema arises in the self, is rati. So rati is attraction for the Supreme Lord. So rati is the initial stage of prema. So same point is made in later on by Krishna himself. And again, to emphasize that this is something that was after careful scrutiny, the point is made that trihi anivikshya manisya, that 3 times trihi anavikshya, it was scrutinizingly read, and manishya, with great attention. So Prabhupada in the purport says that he, Lord Brahma, is certain that becoming a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. And this is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is 1866, directly presented by the Personality of Godhead. The Vedic conclusion is thus accepted by all acharyas. And those who are against this conclusion are only Vedavadratas, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita 242. So 242 is Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham Pravadante Avapaschita Avedavadratha Apartha. So Vedavad, so these are the people who are interested in Karma Kand. So those who are, so there's basically the 2 parts of the Vedas. There's a Karma Kand, Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham Pravadante Avapaschita, that they are attracted by the flowery words of the Veda. So they are called Vedavadrata, followers in name only. But the essence of the Vedas is to become a pure unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Lord. So the 3 times is meant to emphasize on this fact that Krishna is hidden in the Vedas. He is only exposed by bhakti. The second point is that most of the Vedas are Vedavad, are basically Karma Kand. So the path of bhakti is very, very hidden. And the third time is when the path of unalloyed devotional service is discovered. So it's kind of like you have what is it called, like you have wheat, and then you have, what's the other thing called, that's not wheat. So you first you first separate them, and once you separate them, then you extract the essence, and then you understand the essence of it. Okay, 2-35. Bhagwan sarvabhuteshu lakshita savatmahari drishyer buddhyad virdrastha lakshanyer anumapakaha. The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is in every living being, along with the individual soul. And the fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. So this is an interesting verse, because essentially Sukadeva Goswami, after talking about bhakti, is once again talking about Paramatma. So that's what it appears. So when he says that Lord Shri Krishna is in every living being along with the individual soul, who is he talking about? It's talking about Paramatma. Paramatma is there in every living being with an individual soul. But the main point that he's making here is the fact that so not in the Bhagavatam, but when we studied the Isopnishad, then we talked about the various ways of getting knowledge, right? We talked about Pratyaksh Praman, Anuman, Shabda. So what Sukadeva Goswami actually, what here he is doing is that he's establishing the superiority of Shabda Praman. And this verse actually has a very long purport. The same point, and because this is a point that is important for your own understanding and also for convincing others, the same point is made in 3 different ways. And then I'm going to make it in the 3 different ways. So you'll see the repetition, but the idea is for us to understand the flow that Sukadeva Goswami is going. So the previous verse, Sukadeva Goswami, he presented knowledge on the platform of faith. He said Krishna told Brahma is intelligent, he studied it 3 times, or Krishna as Brahma studied it 3 times, that bhakti is the greatest path, so you accept it. Now what he's going to try and do is present knowledge through inference. So from Shabda, he's going to go to Anuman. He's going to do it through inference. And the reason that he is doing it is to provide a platform of support for the skeptics. So the skeptics don't like faith. What is the saying that they say that, show me and I will believe it. They don't believe in anything else. So he's creating a platform for the skeptics, and is also adding corroboration to what he was saying. So he was talking about Paramatma. Now he's saying, now I shall demonstrate to you through the process of inference the existence of Paramatma. So let's see. So the initial summary is by me, which is essentially is a summary of given by Prabhupada. I guess it's just my summary given of what that I understood based on what Prabhupada explains and Jiva Goswami explains and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, high level summary. So the point that is being made here is that the Jiva, who is being described as Drashta. So Drashta is known to exist by Drashyer Buddhya Advir. So because he can observe material intelligence, it means that he is separate from material intelligence, which means that there is a conscious seer, which we shall call Jiva. So Drishta means that one who is seeing, and Drishyer Buddhi Adabir is that which is seen. So the Jiva, who is the Drishta, is seeing intelligence, the Drishyer Buddhi Adabir. So this is the process of introspection, right? If you introspect, then you say, why do I do like this? Why do I do like that? So who is thinking about, who is observing whom? Sometimes you get angry and you say, I should not get angry. So who's telling you that I should not get angry? Or sometimes you do something and you say, no, I should not do this. I should actually be doing something else. So there is a Drishta and there is a Drishyer. So the Drishta can be understood to be separate from the Drishyer. The Drishta is the Jiva. So this implies that intelligence, and the other factors, they are external to the jiva and they accompany him because they are useful to fulfill his goals. Right? So the person goes and dives in the water and he puts on a diving suit. It's external to him, but they're useful because they protect him in the water, they help him breathe. But clearly what it means is, so one may say that what is the need for intelligence, right? Why can't there be just drishta? What is the need for drishtir? So the need for drishtir is that they are causes for fulfilling his goals. Now, in a similar way, so we have established the existence of jiva by these 2 points. So in a similar way, the existence of a super soul can be inferred by qualities such as superior intelligence. So the jiva can observe within a certain realm, but then there are some things that the jiva cannot do. So the jiva does not know how his body works. If he knew, he could fix it, right? If the jiva knows how the body works, he could say, okay, I have high blood pressure, so let me turn down my valve in the heart and my blood pressure is normal. Or my mind is wandering, so let me do something over here, my mind is now focused. But he cannot do that. Similarly, he cannot manipulate the forces in the universe. He cannot say that, let me change the gravity. Let me change the nature of the sun. So what does this mean? So this means that there is something else which is superior to beyond the jiva and superior to the jiva. Another way to establish the superiority of an intelligence over jiva is that 2 jivas may do exactly the same action but achieve different results. So what does this mean? That the jiva does not have full control on the result of his action, right? So there are 2 jivas, they want to achieve something, they do the same thing. Both of them study hard, one passes, one does not pass. And what does it mean? That there is somebody else that is awarding the results in a way that is beyond the comprehension of the jiva. So with these 2, what we can understand, that there is a jiva that is a controller and a doer, distinct from matter, and he is subservient to a superior controller, the super soul. All this is established through inference. There is no scripture over here. There is no Brahma, there is no Krishna, there is no quoting of the verses. Sukadeva Goswami is presenting this verse in a way that you can go and speak about it to a person in the street and the logic will be irrefutable. So let us see now how it is explained by. So I'll go through the explanation given by Burijan Prabhu. He kind of takes Prabhupada's explanation and expands upon it, and he also blends in explanation by Jiva Goswami from the Sandarbhas. But now that you have understood at a higher level, I'll go through this a little faster. Burijan Prabhu actually makes 13 points, a little extensive. So one can perceive oneself as existing. First point he makes, that one can perceive oneself as existing, right? So what is that? That is pranmaya, that I exist. From there, with a little intelligence, one can understand that one is different from the body. That is, that he is the seer and that his existence is separate from everything else which is seen. So this establishes the position of Jiva as different from matter. Second point is the seer does not see or move independently. And the technique used by Jiva Goswami is, and Bhujan Prabhu expands on it, the technique that he uses is that of the senses. So he says that the seer does not see or move independently. He's talking about two kinds of senses, knowledge sense and action sense. Both sight and movement are dependent on various forms of energy combined in nature. For example, one's ability to see depends on both one's eyes, which is a sense, the presence of light, which is an energy of nature. Similarly, one's five perceptual senses, five working senses, and three subtle senses provide only the mechanics that makes perception and movement possible. They do not in themselves provided experiences as one perceives. So the point made by Bhujan Prabhu is that one cannot see unless there is light. One cannot smell unless there is fragrance. So all the senses that the jiva has, the five perceptual senses, the five working senses, the three subtle mind, intelligence, ego, so they are only the mechanical means of perceiving some things or creating movement. They don't do anything more than, they don't provide any experiences. So it's kind of like having a, instead of a eye, if you have a camera that is recording light movements, but that's what it does. There's nothing more that it does, right? The camera can't see that this is a animal, this is a human being, this is water, this is, it doesn't do anything. All that it does is that it records things. So the third point is that the experiences, like when one is seeing something, is nothing but the product of the inexhaustible permutation and combination of the forms taken by the natural energy. So one's ability to see is subject to the conditions imposed upon him by nature. So what does that lead us to? That which is seen is matter, and that which is capable of seeing is spirit. That which is seen is unconscious, and that which sees is conscious. Right? So you see how the flow is. So what is established earlier on, that seeing itself is mechanical, but experiencing the seeing is not mechanical. It's adding intelligence on the seeing. Just uh, creating a lens to catch a light and an image doesn't add does not add anything. But when one is able to take that and add context to it, that yes, there is a tiger coming to me, so I should now run away. Yes, this person coming to me is a friend, so I should greet. So that is a symptom of consciousness. So goes on to say that the seer experiences his material conditioning in the form of dissatisfaction with the limitation that matter imposes. Why? Because nothing material has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. It is definite that matter and spirit are two identities. One can thus conclude that the seer is spiritual and the seen is matter. Spirit and matter are distinct from one another. So this is the same point that I was making, that the fact that there is uh, there is a difference between the object and the subject. That just seeing is materially limited. Why is it materially limited? Because it is matter. Right? We cannot see beyond a certain distance. We cannot see something that is smaller than a certain size. That's the nature of matter, that it imposes. It imposes a limitation. But one who is seeing is not subject to this limitations. So one who is seeing can also see that which is not empirically evident. So what's the example of that? That one sees the sun in the sky, right? And they will not see the sun in the sky, but they will see the sun by inference. Or one may see the moon in the sky, and one may see a small disk, but by one's intelligence, one will know that this is a large planet. That is a characteristic of spirit. So the conclusion is that the nature of spirit is consciousness, and the symptom of consciousness is intelligence. So when the living entity uses his intelligence, he directs himself by this intelligence. So by virtue of this intelligence, he will do sankalp or vikalp. He will either accept or he will reject. So the reason that he is doing sankalp and vikalp, the reason that he is accepting and rejecting, is a symptom of his dependence on an intelligence that is superior to his own intelligence. So what it means is that by one's own intelligence, one is receiving instructions from somebody else, and based on that, it is accepting and it is rejecting. Now, in addition to that, one can also perceive that there is a vast gradation of intelligence among living entities. And no one living entity possesses the totality of intelligence. So if intelligence was self-sustaining, self-defining, then everybody would eventually elevate themselves to the highest form of intelligence. But that is not true. There are different jivas with different kinds of intelligence. There are different species with different kinds of intelligence. And then most important thing is that the sum of the intelligence is greater than the intelligence possessed by any one entity, or even the sum of the entity of all the intelligence of all the entities. So if you have 1,000,000 entities and each one of them have, just being for the sake of explanation, each one of them have 10 units of intelligence, then one can understand that 10 million units of intelligence is less than the total amount of intelligence that is available. So how do we know that? Because if the sum of the individual intelligence equal the total intelligence present, then all the questions in the universe would be answered. If one person cannot answer on their own, they would go to the next person, who would go to the next person, and eventually all the questions in the universe would be answered just on the basis of intelligence. So we see a symptom of that, right? We see a symptom of how, because of cumulative intelligence, more and more questions are answered. Newton talked about the laws of motion, Einstein talked about quantum, there are people who are probably talking about different things. So we see that more and more questions are being answered, and this is just in the material realm. but all the questions are not answered, specifically in the spiritual realm. So what does it mean that there is a sum totality of the intelligence that is even higher than all the total individual intelligence? So the superior principle of the, so this is called the super self or the super soul. So Jiva Goswami goes on to say that one then naturally wishes to know what causes the super soul to apportion different amounts of intelligence to the various entities. And the answer, of course, is given in Bhagavad Gita. It is based on what they desire and what they deserve. But the important point over here is there is somebody who is apportioning intelligence. So there is somebody sitting at the top who is saying you will get 10 units of intelligence, you will get 20 units, you will get 100 units. So regardless of the fact that there is a mechanism, but there is somebody who is working that machinery, who is saying that this is what you deserve, this is what you desire, this is what you get. So the matter of fact is that there is a super soul that is existing on top of all the souls. All living entities face a choice. Should one orient himself towards ignorance or towards spiritual concept of existence? If one chooses the spiritual conception, then he can move towards the understanding by surrendering to the super soul. Then rather than one's desire being dictated and limited by the body, his desires will be centered upon the Lord's desire. The Lord then will award him the appropriate corresponding intelligence. So here you see what he is talking about. The fact is that now that we have established that the intelligence is given to you by the Lord based on what you desire, if you are to desire the intelligence by which you can surrender to the Lord, he will give you that. He will give you that intelligence. So far as common sense is concerned, we have come to the conclusion that there are three identities, namely matter, spirit, and super soul. Now, if you go to the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, we can understand that all these three identities, namely matter, individual spirit, and super soul, are dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Jiva Goswami goes one step further. So he not only talks about matter, soul, and super soul, he also talks about the fact that all three of them, including the super soul, is dependent upon Krishna. So the reason that the super soul is considered to be dependent on Krishna because he is a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the final point that he makes is that the realization of the super self by the individual self is the beginning of self-realization. And by the progress of such self-realization, one is able to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by intelligence, by the help of authorized scriptures, and principally by the grace of the Lord. So this is, in a sense, the overriding statement that one is you establish the fact that there is matter, soul, and super soul. After having, and that can be done through empirical observation. After having done that, after one is convinced about the existence of the super soul, when one tries to use their intelligence according to what the super soul desires, then the mercy of the super soul comes, and then one's intelligence gets more elevated, is directed towards the process of devotional service. Bhakti, surrender to the Lord, is loving devotion, is the method the Lord himself recommended to those wishing to accomplish this end. So Srila Prabhupada, so this is the second explanation to this. Now Srila Prabhupada in the purport also, he summarizes this in in a more simple way, and I'll quickly go through it. And I think I've taken a long time, but given the length of purport, Srila Prabhupada considers this to be an important verse, so I'm also spending the same amount of time. So let's see what Prabhupada says. So he said the hands, legs, etc. are separate from the person. He is the seer, and there's a difference between the seer and the seen. So this is one of Prabhupada's favorite technique. He says, point to your eyes, point to your nose. So what does it mean? You're pointing to your eyes, you're pointing to your nose, so you are separate from them. So there's the seer and the seen. So the seer is the soul and the seen is the body. Second point he makes is the senses of perception are action are supplied to us by the material energy. The sense objects are combination of the transformation of material energy. Same point Jiva Goswami makes of how the eyes see because there is something to be seen and the presence of light that enables it to be seen. So they're all combinations of the transformations of material energy. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says the seer has no independent power of perception or of motion. Since the seer is conditioned by the material energy, we can conclude that the seer is spiritual and the senses and the sense objects are material. So here again is making that distinction between the seer and the seen, that the seer is spiritual and the seen is material. Further proof that the seer is spiritual is because he is dissatisfied with the limited state of material existence. So this is an empirical observation that this whole material world is a place of unhappiness, is a place of dissatisfaction. So it means that the seer is not in his natural element. So this is further proof that the seer is spiritual and the surrounding is material. All living beings see or act with the use of intelligence. The fact that one can understand what he sees implies that there is a director of intelligence. The intelligence is the direction of some higher authority. This higher authority is the supersoul. Although not material, the spiritual self identifies with the material, and because of this, matter is animated. This is done by the agency of the supersoul. So Srila Prabhupada takes a slightly different route in saying that, talking about the presence of the supersoul, that how does the soul animate the matter? The soul does not know how to animate matter. All that the soul can do is desire. But the fact that the soul is animating matter without even knowing how to animate matter means that there is somebody else higher than the soul, which is the agency of the supersoul. Then how is the supersoul animating matter? The supersoul is guiding and supplying according to one's desire. Freedom of the soul lies in orienting away from the ignorant material misconception that he is the body, and towards the true spiritual conception that he is spiritual and supersoul is his friend and guide. Thus, the soul understands that there are three identities: matter, spirit, and supersoul. Now, if you go to the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, we can understand that all three identities are dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan Shri Krishna. And if you go to the Bhagavad Gita, you can always get the relevant verses that talk about it. He cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual self. Therefore, the supersoul is not a full representation of the personality of Godhead. If the soul is determined and also praise the mercy of the director of intelligence, supersoul, the purport of the Veda is revealed and he can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see the same point made by Srila Prabhupada, made by Jiva Goswami, which counts. My summary is just my understanding, but the same point that is made by these two acharyas, essentially talking about empirically understanding the existence of the Jiva, Paramatma, and Prakriti, And by understanding this difference, the jiva surrenders to the super soul, takes direction and guidance from the super soul. By the process of taking this direction and guidance, the jiva gets the mercy of the super soul, and through that mercy, he is able to go to that who supports the super soul, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. What I'll also do is I'll send to Prem Kishore Prabhu this explanations that are given by Jiva Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, so that you can also ruminate on it and read at your leisure. But I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a comment, when you were saying that when they invented the camera, there's a lens and light. Now they're bringing the virtual intelligence into it. They are trying to building some, how a human reflect, but it won't go in too much because there's a human behind it also.
That's a good point. It's kind of like a paddle, right? So whatever intelligence they can build into the camera will be limited by the intelligence of the humans behind it. Same way that, whatever intelligence that the humans get is limited to whatever the super soul gives it. Cannot go beyond it there. Okay.
Just a comment. Thank you very much, Prabhu. It's a deep explanation, but still I think more reading is required from my end to be more clear on it. Just wanted to thank you.
Sure. Okay, so there's no more. We'll do. So there are two more verses left. So we'll finish the chapter, and then I'll take a pause and see if there is any question on the chapter as a whole or any other question. The 2 to 36. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvada shrotavya kirtavayascha smartavya bhagavanana. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. So the verse starts with Tasmat, and Tasmat means therefore, or it is the conclusion. So this verse is actually a conclusion of verses 33 and 34. Verse 35 that we did previously was kind of it was a detail. But the point that was made in 33, 34, which is that the attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the highest perfection of religion. Therefore, it is essential that every human being should hear about, glorify, and remember always and everywhere. That's the flow of the verse. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that if somebody were to object to that and say that when verses are coming in sequence, then you should consider them so. He says that even if you consider Tasmat as the conclusion of 235, then one can read it as that because the Lord is seen as Paramatma in all beings, one must hear about him and glorify. So in that case, he says this is talking about the Shantaratis, the ones who are attracted to the Supreme Lord, or as the Acharyas prefer, this verse is talking about Bhakti. So you can identify the three prominent angas of bhakti that are given over here, which is Shravan, Kirtan, Smaran. That one should hear Shravan, one should glorify Kirtan, and one should remember Smaran. So this verse is an answer to the original question of Parikshit Maharaj, that what should a person do? Right? He says, what should a person do, and what should a person who's about to die do? Same answer to both the question, that he should Shravana Kirtan Smaran on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shrotav Shrotavya Kirtavya Smartavya Bhagavan. And he said that is the duty of Nanam. That is the duty of the human being. So 3 times in the verse, Sukdev Goswami, he uses the word sarva to emphasize that this is a universal solution. There are no exclusions, there are no preconditions. So he says sarvatmana, all souls, no exclusions. It's not meant for devas, not meant for liberated souls, not meant for munis. Sarvatma, everybody. Then sarvatra, everywhere. Does not matter where you are, in heaven or in hell, in lower planet or in higher planet, anywhere, everywhere. Sarvatmana, sarvatra, sarvada. Sarvada means all times. So all souls at all times, at all places. The second canto, first chapter. I'm not sure what has happened, but my phone started talking back to me for some reason. So gave me a sense of sarvatra. So the point that Sukdev Goswami is making over here, this is the same point that he will also make in the Chaturshloki. In fact, he will use the same phrase over there also, that sarvatra sarvada, everywhere and at all times, one should Shravana Kirtan Smaran. One should engage in the worship. Same point is also made by Sutta Goswami in 1-14. And the verse over there also begins with Tasmad, therefore. He says, therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. So one can understand that this is the principal anga of bhakti. So let's see what Prabhupada says in the purport. Because the Lord is all-pervading, it is essential to glorify Him always and everywhere. In the process of glorifying the Lord, there should be no restriction of time and space. This is called Sanatan Dharma or Bhagavad Dharma. Sanatan means eternal, always and everywhere. Bhagavad means pertaining to Bhagwan, the Lord. The Lord is the master of all time and all space, and therefore the Lord's holy name must be heard, glorified, and remembered everywhere in the world. That will bring about the desired peace and prosperity so eagerly awaited by people of the world. The word cha includes that all the remaining processes or methods of bhakti are also mentioned above. So if you notice in the third line, it is said that Shrotavya Kirtavyas cha. Sarvada Shrotavya Kirtavya cha Smartavya. So cha means also, cha also means etc. in addition. So one might say, are these the only 3 angas of bhakti? Prabhupada says no. The word cha means that these are the 3 principles, but there are the 9 angas of bhakti. And Prabhupada gives the explanation why you should do it all the time. He says because the Lord is present, the master of all time and all space. Because the Lord is everywhere. And because and because the relationship with the Lord has no restriction of time and space, one should at all points of time and in all circumstances glorify the Lord. In the Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami says that this verse describes how does attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead develop. So how does it develop? So he paraphrases this verse. He says that, please let me know what a man, the question was, please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember and worship, and also what he should not do. So this is a question that was specifically asked by Parishad Maharaj to Sukadeva Goswami, right at the end of the first canto, 119:38. And this question is answered over here, that one should chant, remember and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead always and everywhere. And then he goes on to again make the same point. The word cha indicates that this is points to the other angas of bhakti. Okay, so we'll do the next verse, which is the last verse, 2:37. Pibanti ye bhagavatatmanah satam kathamritam shravan puteshu samritam punanti te vishaya vidushitashayam vrajanti tacharan sharoruhanikam. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. So in 1937, Parishad Maharaj had asked the question, what is the highest perfection? And the answer to that is that one should drink through oral reception the nectarian message of Krishna. So Sukadeva Goswami uses the word pibanti. So pibanti means that they should drink. So the acharyas say that this means that he is referring to the sadhakas, to the practicing devotees. Because if he was talking about perfected devotees, then he would use the word drinking as opposed to drink. So pibanti is drink, and not sure what the Sanskrit of drinking is, but you get the sense that because the purified, perfected devotees are already engaged in that service. So the conclusion of this verse is applicable to the sadhakas, right? So that's why it says that they go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he begins with people like us who are practicing devotees, and he ends with the perfected devotees. And what is it that is connecting the two stages? This process of the oral reception of the nectarian message of Krishna. So the phrase in this verse, Bhagwan, which this is in which line? First line, Pibanti ye Bhagavata Atmanaha Satam. So the phrase Bhagavata Atmana Satam, Srila Prabhupada translates it as Krishna, the beloved of his devotees, as the subject of the topic. So that's why he says that those who hear about those who hear Pibanti, who drink through oral reception about Krishna, who is the beloved of his devotees. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he translates it to as Krishna and his beloved devotees, to indicate that both the pastimes of Krishna and the pastimes of his devotees are equally potent in taking one to the stage of perfection. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, by the process of Bhakti Yoga, directly accepted as suggested by this verse, by sufficient hearing of the transcendental message of the Lord, the material contamination is directly eliminated without once attempting to contemplate the impersonal Virat conception of the Lord. And by practicing Bhakti Yoga, if the performer is not purified from the material contamination, he must be a pseudo devotee. For such an impositor, there is no remedy for being freed from material engagement. So Prabhupada kind of works it in the opposite direction. So Jiva Goswami and Sukdev Goswami is saying that when one hears the message of Krishna, one becomes purified. And Prabhupada says that even after hearing the message of Krishna, one is not purified. That means one is a pseudo devotee, which means that he is not really hearing the message. Or what it means is that he is hearing the message with the motivated expectations. Jiva Goswami comments that the word punanti, purify, indirectly indicates that the previous described path of meditating on the Lord's universal form is unable to award the purification required to actually obtain the Lord's lotus feet. Because devotional service itself brings great satisfaction, one should engage only in devotional service. So once again, Jiva Goswami, he's trying to establish the superiority of bhakti, because punanti was never used earlier on. So it is indicated that this particular process is potent enough to purify as it is being executed, as opposed to requiring purification as a prerequisite. So later on, Jiva Goswami, he explains that that hearing the narrations about the Supreme Lord's transcendental pastime is the final highest recommendation of the scriptures. So this is a point that is made by Krishna, where Krishna says, although I have spoken about many paths, this is what is actually recommended. This is in 12.440. Sukdev Goswami also later on, he speaks to Maharaj Parikshit, for a person who is suffering in the fire of countless misery and who desires to cross the insurmountable ocean of material existence, there is no suitable boat except that of cultivating devotion to the transcendental taste for the narration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's pastimes. So this actually is 12.440. The previous verse is actually a quote from the scripture by Jiva Goswami, where Krishna says that although I have spoken about many paths, that this is what is actually recommended. Similar point is also made. I'm not going to read it, but if you read 12.3, 49 to 51, same point is also made, or I'll quickly read it. I'll read the English translation. Therefore, O king, endeavor with all your might to fix the Supreme Lord Kesha within your heart. Maintain this concentration upon the Lord, and at the time of death, you will certainly attain the supreme destiny. My dear king, the personality of Godhead is the ultimate controller. He is the supreme soul and the supreme shelter of all beings. When those who are about to die meditate upon him, he reveals to them his own eternal spiritual identity. My dear king, although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. It is simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one can become free from material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. That is the end of the second chapter, second canto. We have about 7 minutes. If you have any questions or comments, we can talk about it. With respect to what we spoke today or anything in the past.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Just a comment. There's a song. I don't know if you heard it. It's a Pibhare Rama Rasam. It's a South Indian song, I think. But it's talk about how do you drink the nectar of Ram Rasam.
Oh, okay.
This used to be sung during Sri Ram Navami, Prabhuji.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, very nice song this.
And our Bhagavatam third verse also, Nigama Kalpataru verse also has Pibati Bhagavatam Rasamalayam, Muhura Swartasika Bhuvaka.
Yes, they're the same word is actually used. Drinking through the years.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Please accept my this. Are you hear me?
Hare Krishna Mataji, you have to speak up. I can't hear you.
Able to hear me? Okay. Can't hear?
Now I can.
Okay. When I was reading today the second chapter, I was going through the devotional service, performing devotional service and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam that can lead to slacken the mode of passion and ignorance. So I was thinking that if some of the devotees, they are practicing devotional service since long time, but not acting towards like perfecting the the path, like some of the people, they get angry very frequently. So I was thinking that how can I address it, even though we are practicing devotees, sadhakas, and how can I address it? Like where from that is coming, like platform of ignorance, or like where is the root cause? Like I was thinking, like, so how can I?
Root is so root of things like anger and lust. They're all anarthas. So these are contaminations that we have acquired because of our own intrinsic nature, because of the activities that we did. We do a certain kind of activities, and the result of that activities is that it it results in the seed of its own activity, the desire of that activity being sown in us. But anger, like you specifically mentioned, is actually discussed in a bit of details, lust and anger, that these are symptoms of our contaminations, anarthas. And the process of anartha nivriti, is attained through bhajana kriya. Right? So if you look at the stages of devotion, anartha nivriti is right after bhajana kriya. And anartha nivriti is a little different from bhajana kriya because you cannot execute anartha nivriti. Right? You cannot say that today I will sit down and I will stop being angry and I'll stop being envious. Right? We may desire to do that, but we can't really do that. Anartha nivriti is a stage that we are pushed into by the execution of bhajana kriya. So that's an answer. That how do we control anger? How do we control lust? How do we control material contamination? We control it by scrupulously executing the the different uh, rules and regulations of devotional service. So one who has a problem with anger, it is said that if one has a problem with anger, then through the service of devotees, through Vaishnava Seva, that quality gets mitigated. There's an example of a devotee in Australia, and he did not have the problem, or his main problem was not anger. His main problem was lust, actually. But that's what he shared, that every time he felt the pushings to be strong, he would take on some very menial service, like cleaning the pots or cleaning the kitchen, or something that basically, involved him kind of appeasing crushing his ego. And then he would say it would come and it would go. So by following the angas of sadhana, Vaidhi bhakti, all these anarthas, that's the whole process. That sadhana Vaidhi bhakti is designed to dilute and finally eliminate these anarthas.
Yeah, I was thinking of senior devotees who have that anger. So we can't tell them that it's lack of um, service or so, something like that. So
it depends on how senior devotee. So senior devotees will sometimes use anger in the service. So Srila Prabhupada, he displayed anger many times. Like he would chastise his disciples, and he would get angry at situation when he came to Vrindavan and he saw that the Krishna Balaram temple was hardly made. Then he called Subal Prabhu, and he chastised him to the point that he was, and this was after he was basically working 20 hours a day. And Srila Prabhupada called and bitterly chastised him. And then later on, of course, he said that I know you're working hard, but this is my service to you. So it's a difficult service. Somebody has to do it, and I'm doing it. So when many very senior devotees, they display anger, it is mostly for our benefit. They don't come under the influence of anger, but they use anger. There's this famous example of Srila Prabhupada sitting in Mayapur, and he's sitting and he's having nice Krishna Katha with his disciples. They're all talking, jovial. One of his disciples comes in and he's messed up something. As soon as he comes in, Prabhupada's mood changes. He says, "You're nonsense, you're stupid, you're this, you're a rascal, you should do this, you should do that." He severely chastises. And then, that disciple is completely crushed, and then, he begs forgiveness, he leaves. And then as soon as he leaves, Prabhupada turns back again, he's again laughing and smiling and talking with the disciples there. So when somebody's sitting there, notice that, it's not that Prabhupada became angry, but he used anger in service. So that's how I would 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 explain to myself that these are basically when very senior devotees, Vaishnava Mudra ki bujai, when they are basically doing things that we can't understand, we can assume they're doing it to uh, further somebody else's spiritual life.
yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Madhuri. Next question. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we'll stop over here. Next week not next week, Wednesday, yeah, Wednesday we will start from the 3rd chapter. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev vacho patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnavebhyo jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.